Welcome, everyone. My name is Carla Fuentes. I'm branding director of FlavorWiki, and this is our first webinar of our market studies series. With us, we have Daniel Protz. He's our CEO, and Marcia Young. She's our senior advisor, consumer intelligence. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Great, thanks, Carla. Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm the founder and CEO of FlavorWiki. We have a slide, actually, if you can advance it. I think we have Carla. With the team members on it. You go forward one slide. That's actually the agenda. Anyway, my name is Daniel. I'm the founder and CEO. I'll talk a bit more about my background in the company in a bit. Maybe Marcia, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Marcia Young, and as Carla mentioned, I'm a senior advisor at FlavorWiki on consumer intelligence. And I have been in the food industry for over 40 years. I have most recently retired from Mondelez International, where I was their global head of consumer science. But I also spent part of my career managing product and process development at notably Campbell Soup and Sara Lee Bakery. So I have vast experience in the consumer packaged goods arena. And as I said, I retired, but joined FlavorWiki in June. And I was a client of theirs at one point at Mondelez, and now happy to join them on their journey.
Thanks, Marcia. So thanks everyone for joining. We've got an agenda here today, so just going to review this and then we'll get started. So first is, to meet us. We've gone through that part already. And then I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what FlavorWiki is, just to give people a sense of the background of the company, where we're coming from. And then we're going to turn it over to Marcia to talk more about what we call the full purchase or full consumer experience, which is what we, one of the things we specialize in doing at FlavorWiki. We have the name FlavorWiki, which makes people think we do only the food related and food related analysis, but we're doing much more than that. I'm going to talk then about the reporting and analytics that we can do, both in our application software platform and in exterior to that. We have a team of data scientists that is working on that type of work. And then we'll finish up by talking about how our speed is a component and how we can gain some speed by using digital tools, which is what we are. And then finally, we'll have time for Q&A. Carla is going to manage the questions on her side. And then we'll just take it away. If we have questions that you really want to stop and have us answer right away, that's fine. Just put that in the chat, either the chat or the private questions, either one, and Carla will interrupt and we'll take it that way. We want to make it as interactive as we can. Thanks very much. So let's go. So that's us. As we already covered that part. Let's talk about what is FlavorWiki. So, just a bit of background on the company itself. I myself don't have a food background. Before this, I was head of operations for Groupon in Europe. I ran a nearly €1 billion e-commerce business across 13 countries in EMEA. And the thing that I saw happening in the online space and digital space is that you'd had many different product categories over time since the mid-90s that were more and more going into digital retail. Like basically products were being sold online. You have I think everybody's got the experiences now with this. Facebook essentially sells advertising and marketing online, and that's what they do. They allow small companies to do that, as does Google. Amazon sells all different types of things now, but you also have digital products coming from Netflix and the like. You have apparel, health and beauty. And my thought at the time in 2017 was that food was going to more and more be transacted in the online space. And then, of course, when you don't have this physical interaction with the product, things are going to be different in terms of how the consumer makes decisions and how we analyze consumer information. And what I wanted to try to do is to define a digital technology that would allow us to understand what people were tasting, you know, what experience they were having with things that are abstract, taste, texture, flavor, mouthfeel, which are not easily quantified and described. And then how could we use that information to better understand the consumer? Next slide, please. But you know, we actually do that. We do a lot of work with personalization with our own consumer community, as we'll talk about it later. But you know, what I found is that the application of this machine learning algorithm, which we developed, had a lot of you know, immediate real world benefit in market research. And the ways that we think about our key benefit is that, you know, because we're using digital and we're using a crowd and we're able to measure both sensory and hedonic information, we can kind of look at the full experience that the consumer is having, buying the product and consuming the product and potentially repeat purchasing it. We can do this much faster in terms of project execution than you could in a traditional kind of CLT or a consumer testing model. The other thing is that we can do it anywhere in the world, right? Like, because anywhere that someone has an internet connection, they have a smartphone, we can target people based on demographic. We behave in much more like a market research, sorry, a marketing company or an e-commerce company in this regard. So we're able to be very agile and reach different demographics. And as I mentioned before, we can kind of look at all the different reasons why they might be purchasing, including in that online space, their interaction with the product or the product presentation, you know, with these classical e-commerce related data and analytics around consumer behavior in the retail space, which is, you know, a smartphone or a computer these days. Next slide, please. How you can work with us now at the end, or how we deliver our product. So we are a software as a service company. So we have a software platform, which allows our customers of the software to develop questionnaires and to integrate, you know, interactive experiences with the consumer, to ask them questions or to capture video, to do different things that allow them to understand the consumer in our application. So we basically give you all the tools that we have to do market research and consumer understanding, which you can then use inside your enterprise. Either internally, we do have companies using it as an internal sensory evaluation tool in a traditional setting, or more appropriately doing this with consumers where they're accessing it through a smartphone. The other way that we help customers is we use that same platform to do our own consumer studies. We're active in 21 countries right now, and we're constantly putting down roots in new countries. I'll talk how we do that. To build our own communities and own groups of people that we can then get them to go and evaluate products in the market or ship them samples for product evaluation. So that's where we're dealing with a group that we own and curate ourselves. Next slide, please. So what about the platform? It's totally digital. We don't have any centers or testing centers or anything like that. We try to work completely in the crowd or cloud, as you will. It is worldwide. Everything we do is in real time. So we don't like to take time to analyze data. We like to do everything inside the application. That means cut the data, you know, segment it, do all the statistical analytics, all the different fact finding that you can do in and around this data and information. We like to do directly in our platform, and that's what our 15 or 16 person team in the software development space are doing all the time. And as we'll talk about, we have quant solutions, we have qualitative solutions, we have a network of moderators. So we're able to combine our data capture analytics around, you know, food and purchase experience with also the more traditional approaches like qualitative. Next slide. The people we work with are, you know, the larger packaged goods companies, as well as a lot of food ingredient businesses. We have kind of the roots of the company are in the flavor industry. You know, we did a lot of our early work with flavor companies. Our team coming out of the original team coming out of a background in the flavor industry, and so we've really tried to mix the information that we can get or that we can help our customers gather in the product development phases all the way through to the consumer. We call it connecting the dots, which is why you'll see that we kind of interface with different companies across the value chain, including companies that are selling direct to consumer online. So we want to bring that whole consumer understanding all the way back into the supply chain. Next slide, please. We're founded 2017. We've worked in 18 countries. Worked for companies in 18, for customers in 18 countries. But we are now expanding our footprint just because we know that we want to have a global owned community. That's our goal. We are a distributed company. I'm based in Zurich, although I'm an American nationality. I'm based in Zurich. Been here for 15 years. Some of the team is in Zurich. The rest is based all around the world in different places. So we have teams in every continent. And we also have really good representation of nationality and language. What's important, because we work in many different languages. The application itself is available in actually now 16 languages. The slide's a bit out of date, and we're expanding that all the time. Next slide, please. It's a little bit more about the team, which we talked about before, but essentially coming out of the food and flavor industry, a lot of people with food technology and consumer insight backgrounds. Next slide. So how we think about the market research landscape and how we fit into it. And today you have a lot of traditional providers that are service providers and research houses. They're been around a long time and they do things in a relatively traditional way. You have some agile tech solutions which are inexpensive. Some of them are inexpensive and easy to use, more self-service. And then you have panels which you can rent. Usually this means though that you are renting these panels for doing digital research or surveys or bringing them into a center. Next slide. We think that those are a little bit fragmented in terms of a solution. So what we're looking to do is to bring together all of those things in one platform, what we're doing with an own community, and then also adding an actual e-commerce component on top of this so that we can observe and understand more about our user base as far as how they shop, what other products they do or they purchase, their cross preferences and things like this, and bring that into the understanding we have about our consumer community group, which can help our customers when we're doing research. And then finally, obviously integrating with other platforms, data platforms, cloud-based platforms, commerce platforms, and finally a global logistics capability. Our goal is to be able to ship and get samples to consumers in any part of the world that we work in, and we're doing that in some difficult parts of the world now, even West African countries and things like this. Next slide. Our solution set breaks down into what we do for packaged goods companies, what we do for suppliers and distributors, and then what we do for online retailers. It's kind of how we think about the three segments of the industry. Maybe the supplier should be on the left-hand side, but we really want to connect all the way from the ingredients that are going into the food to help our companies and our clients connect that data all the way through to the consumer and back again. Because at the end of the day, it's about what does the consumer think, what does the consumer taste, and then what is the build, both from a food matrix point of view, but also just a brand and positioning point of view that matters. And online, we believe is very much the future. Of course, we do a lot of work in the traditional retail setting, what we'll show you, but we really focus on how can we be more agile with these tools in an online and digital way. Next slide, please. When you think about what we do for packaged goods companies or even ingredient companies, you can think about some of our deliverables similar to a traditional research house. Things like market mapping, where we're doing statistical drivers of liking across the whole driver's preference, not just the food. Benchmarking or competitive benchmarking of product. Things like shopping behavior, price elasticity information. Once we have the consumer group that we're able to deal with, we do a lot of different things. So we do concept testing, package testing, a lot of post and pre-launch analysis. So not that you have to wait until your Nielsen data comes in. You can understand right away when your product hits the shelf what the consumers think. Also, if they can find it, and then relatively like what they would be interested to pay for it. So we do that in post-launch, but also pre-launch situations where the product might only be available in a couple of different locations in certain cities, we can get people to go out and look for those. Qualitative solutions for samples or just focus groups, and then finally in-home sampling as well. Next slide. So when it comes to demographics, we really, as a digital company, we believe that this is a place where we can go above and beyond in terms of ability to reach nuanced demographics, but also grow large consumer group communities. So we think about our goals in terms of millions, globally, and we're in hundreds of thousands now globally. Not in terms of just a fixed panel. We really want to be able to have an intimate relationship with our user to understand better what we can do to make their experience better, and of course we can then get information from research. Which means we actually find that in our studies, about 70% of the people that are doing any of our studies are new to us, and usually 60 or 70% of them have never done consumer research before. I'll talk more about how we recruit a little bit later, but this is really comes from the nature of being more like a digital marketing or e-com company from the perspective of how we recruit. And this can be very, very localized. It can be down to like specific addresses in cities where people are going to go. Next slide. Data quality is, of course, important. It's important to our clients. It's important to us. The way we do recruitment and the way we do incentivizing is an important point here. I'll talk in detail about the recruitment later, but the way we recruit is we actually have our users doing a lot of different tasting activities before they even get into the situation of doing a study for a customer. And we use a reward system which is almost never more than the value of the product that the user is testing. And this is really important because it disincentivizes people that are looking to make excess money as a quote unquote professional tester. So that's something which we've noticed is really important, is that we're attracting people that are natural category consumers, and then we're filtering even further within those. And then finally, being a digital company, we can see a lot of behavioral and algorithmic related information from the user's interaction with the application, including using this question for sensory profiling that we'll talk about later, which is very pattern-based, that allows us to understand, is the consumer actually tasting the product that we asked them to, or are they just clicking buttons in the survey? And finally, we use images and other purchase proofs to do quality testing. Next slide, please. In terms of qualitative and prototype solutions, you can conduct focus groups with us where you either can bring your own moderator or we'll supply a professional moderator that's working with that. Again, it's all online. We have in some cases done these in one location with several consumers, but it's rare. We find that it's just more advantageous to do it in a distributed way. And then the sample delivery is something which we can handle as long as the food is legal for consumption by a consumer. Next slide. We already talked about this, but there are some examples of different packages that we've prepared, and the way also which the consumer interacts, again, using the smartphone. So everything is scannable and traceable within their smartphone. They don't have to download an application from the App Store or Google Play. It works directly in their mobile phone browser, either Android or Apple, doesn't matter. We've done tests in so many different parts of the world now that we're pretty well optimized to all the different phone types. It also can run in your web browser on your computer, what we'll show a little bit later. Next slide. For suppliers, we have developed some modules that suppliers use, which we call customer interaction. This can be used with with your customer, depending upon who you are, who's listening. If you're a supplier and you're selling ingredients, you can use this to evaluate prototypes together with your customers, either in a virtual, we call virtual tasting, or by sending them samples and tracking and tracing those samples. It can also be done using the application if you're testing a product or tasting a product together with a retail or grocery buyer, what's a little bit less common. But if you're dealing with a lot of prototypes and have a lot of salespeople out there, we have some modules that can help you to data mine that information to make your product offering better. Next slide. And then again, all the different places in which we can integrate this to point of sale, to personalization, websites, mobile apps. All of our tools can be integrated into other digital assets quite easily. Next slide. So, Marsha.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. So I'm going to talk about the full purchase experience, what FlavorWiki is able to do, and why it's important to look at the full purchase experience. Okay. So again, mapping, a 360 experience. The world has changed on us. Retailing has changed. Consumers have changed. Advancement in terms of the type of products. If you look at, plant-based today, compared to just even a couple of years ago, you can see just a really changing landscape. And how best to understand those changes and be ready for those changes. Mapping 360 purchase experience, I think, is really important as we move forward. Within the FlavorWiki application, it's always on, no matter where in the world. And many of us that have worked in global companies know that it's 24/7, and the ability to reach those consumers when you need to. The FlavorWiki does provide that. And again, going through not just a sample and finding out how well the product is liked and getting some diagnostic information, you're also able to look at what is happening in the store, in the shop, when they get it home, the packaging, the product, the pricing, and getting that all into one. You're also able to capture video and images if you need to, which can be very important nowadays, particularly if with sustainability and recycled packages and what's happening in that space. You're also able to capture that with the platform. And again, the viability in terms of on the go at the moment of consumption. So not all products are evaluated in home. It can be on the go. It is really ready whenever your consumer is, how and when they consume the product, which is really important nowadays. Next slide. So how it works when you're going to launch a test with FlavorWiki. We're going to launch the campaign, and it's going to invite testers to participate. As Daniel mentioned, we're always building the community, so you'll get new tasters from the invites and social media sign up. So new testers are always coming in to the platform, so you'll get the invites out there, and then they'll go and do the shop. Now, in this case, again, we're talking about a 360 view. And, nowadays it may be that shop is in retail, traditional retail. It may be in a hypermarket. It may be online. It could be in a club store. It might be in a C-store. There's many different places that products are sourced today. And you have the ability to evaluate all of those various sources and learn about your products. And then the consumer will then access the questionnaire online. Again, no download. They have it right there. They're evaluating the sample. They're taking the survey as they're evaluating, and then you get real-time reports. So as the test is going, you're able to go in and evaluate who's responded, the data that's available to you, and what you can do with it right at during test time. Next slide. Okay. With this app or platform, I should say, the ability to connect and innovate and sell more on this platform is really a great asset to companies. You can look at, your point of sale right away in terms of how satisfied were they with the service level that they got, Were they able to find the products in the store? How does it perform at shelf? Where are you compared to other products? Pricing, so forth. And then even, products online. How does your product perform in the e-commerce space? Because even in product categories today, companies are selling in e-commerce as well as the traditional retailing. And so how does the product show up? How do they find it? What other products are being compared to yours? All that kind of information is at the ready when you're using this platform with your consumers. Next slide. Okay. Daniel talked a little bit about pre and post-launch response. The importance of this, in the consumer journey is key. A lot of times, you're getting ready and for that launch, you might have some questions. You might feel that you want to still do some improvements even after the product is launched. But the platform will allow you to do pre-launch testing very rapidly to get feedback early, and then also to be able to drive trial. So through the user community, the ability for people to go out, send them out, try to get the product, purchase it, and then talk about it and socialize it, and be early advocates is another feature of the platform, which I think is very important nowadays. When you look at what's happening in the social media area, and people talking about products and their experiences, the platform is a great tool for that. And then, again, getting at that moment of truth and really looking at all moments of truth, right? What happens when you're buying the product? What happens when they get it home? What happens when they're actually trying it with family, with friends, or themselves, whichever that true moment of truth is, and your ability to evaluate those. Next. Okay, long-term data mining. Just to point out here, and I know that it's kind of a hot button these days in terms of companies treating their data as an asset. And many companies have lots of data around, right? And whether it used to be on people's laptops, then it was on shared drives. Now companies are trying to create data lakes in order to have the ability to mine their data. And so with this platform, it does provide the opportunity for a standardized repository of your data across that entire portfolio. It allows you to very quickly and easily share results and reports, both internally with colleagues, as well as with customers and suppliers. And it is also able to then, because you own the data and you have the data, you're able to then take that and begin to add your raw material data, process, sales figures, in order for your internal data scientists to be able to mine this data, which is going to be a very, very powerful thing as we move forward in the industry. Okay. I'm going to hand that back to you.
Thanks, Marcia.
Yep.
Daniel, before we move forward, we have a question from Denise. She says, assuming the product is legal to try, is there any other limitations to the aisles of the product sent to consumers? Is it frozen or refrigerated?
If it's frozen or refrigerated, it's possible to get it to consumers. We, of course, have to consider the supply chain, the cold chain, if that's the question. Each case is a little bit different. I mean, we've been asked to, for example, send yogurts from Europe to the Middle East. That is not the best scenario, just because the product would not be reliable, that it would get there in a good condition. But typically, if a company is active in a market, we could figure out a way in which we could get the cold supply chain to work. Cost is always just the question around that, but it's possible, absolutely.
Yeah, it isn't a limitation of the platform. It really is the same limitation you would have as a company or a researcher doing any type of this work. So you need to ensure that you have the proper logistics in place to get that product through the cold chain.
Yeah, yeah. In those cases, what we think works really well is if you have a product that is like ice cream that you're developing and you're doing prototyping with that, we can fix a group that's more standard, or we can find a country or a place where you want to test. And then if we have repeated tests where you're doing iteration, then of course each time it's easier to do that. Obviously, you're shipping ice cream. That's just reality. Some countries are better than others too. The U.S. actually has quite a bit of online delivery of ice cream going on now, but I can't speak for every country working on that. Any other questions right now? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the reporting and analytics part of FlavorWiki. So there's a couple of slides, and then I'm going to, ask Carla to share back the capability for me to show my screen and go into a little bit of the dashboard type of work. So we'll switch back and forth here a little bit. So Carla, next slide. The way in which we deliver reports, it's twofold. One is inside the software, which is, it's an always-on situation, as Marcia mentioned. You can go in and you can see the results that you're collecting. Either, if you're a subscriber to the software, you're collecting those results on the platform from your users or from your customers or from your employees in an anonymous way. Or if we're collecting data for you, we will share these dashboards with you so you can do the analytics in the software based on logging into a platform online. The other thing that we do, of course, because many companies are looking for this, is that we produce the standard types of PowerPoint reports that have specific analytics and that have specific top line reporting and conclusions. So we are able to do the full service if you want that. Some companies don't want that. They have their own internal teams that are able to do that. They're just looking for raw data, and then they can avail themselves of the dashboard, which I'm going to show you in a second. So Carla, I can just share my screen directly now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just a moment then to do this. Let me know when you can see things. Good.
It's small. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Great. So this is what we call the back end of the software, or the operator side. So there's two sides to this. One is obviously the taster. The taster has a complete experience, which is a fully dedicated consumer experience or user experience. But we need to have a dashboard and platform in which to control this. So this is where we create all the questionnaires, also where we do the data analytics. So when we create a questionnaire, or when someone creates the questionnaire in the software, well, I'll show you in a moment, they also define how all of the charting will work and how all of the data manipulation will work. So this means that as we collect the data, this is how we're going to represent it. But it also means that we can represent this data. You can upload additional data if you wanted to. We can create a container to hold other data that you might have to represent it in a similar way. So each one of these kind of tabs up here, which you see, these are all specific to each study or each questionnaire design, and we can completely manipulate where and when all of the various charts appear. In this case, this is all sanitized data from some data we collected in the United States. You can see we've got all of the relevant demographic information. All this is customizable in the sense that when you brief us, you tell us what you want to see and who you want to talk to, and then we'll make sure that we have all that related ethnographic and demographic filters. All of this can be, manipulated, cut, filtered, redesigned. We can filter all of this data by all of the related information. So any of the information that you see in the dashboard, we can click and say, okay, I only want to see people that answered, 9 or 10, or the only people that answered, just about right, etc. All of that is possible inside the interface. We can also do this based on date. So all, data analytics and data dive is kind of like what we specialize in. So that's the data representation component of it. All the relevant purchase drivers and things that we track through that purchase experience, as Marcia mentioned, we capture here that allow you to cut and look at that. Additionally, all of the statistical treatments, all the ANOVA statistics, correlation statistics, everything which would be sensible to run on data that was collected of that type, you can run directly in the interface. And you can also run it based on the cuts of the data that you would be making. So if you wanted to look at, for example, only females or males, etc. Obviously, the raw information is available here, but you can as well see all of this related statistical information directly there. The same thing goes for the sensoric aspect of it. So this particular AI question, which we've developed, that is, about 85% as accurate as a trained panel for sensory components. We can run all of the statistical related information about what's the significance of difference between rating A and rating B, or intensity A and intensity B. We can also run principal component analysis, penalty analysis, and essentially anything that we would need or you would need to run a full deep dive of the data that was collected can be done directly in the dashboard of the software. And this is something which you then can avail yourself of, after you have the data. You can go in and look at it together with your team. But of course, we also then use this information to create a report. And that report is generated directly out of here in PowerPoint. We then format it and make it, if it's a full report that we're giving to a customer, we give it to a designer who then, makes it look exactly the way that it should for your internal branding. But you can also create quick PDF reports here, which will take a second to generate, and template them so that every time you run a study or every time you go to a meeting, you can download a PDF that's exactly the way that you want it structured. This is a pretty big file, so you can see here I can cut information, I can drag and drop, I can essentially organize my data and my report how I want it. We can also place your brand on this if you want, and then you can save this as a template. So all this related information is available to you to focus on just top line, or to dig deeper and to create summary reports. Could even be for marketing material, right? All of this is of course available in a format that would allow you to drag and drop these assets out into your own marketing assets, etc. It's also possible to get the raw data directly from a API endpoint. In our case, we look at many of the data points, and we give this to you separately in an export. As you can see here, I can share this with a colleague. I can share the statistics with the colleague so they can also look at it in a secure dashboard. But I also then can send a report of this, and there's various different transformations of the raw data, which is in different organizations depending upon the type of analysis that you might do. I can send that to somebody else. I can send it to myself via email. I can again filter it by date if I want to. So because speed of execution is a key component for us, we also then avail our subscribers to the software of all these different capabilities as well, to help them run internal projects. There's a QR code generator in here as well that allows you to QR code a sample or a sample that you're sending out, and then creating this survey, as I mentioned before, from an analytical point of view, is quite simple. We can generate a product catalog inside here with images and photos, etc. But as well, if you have other data that you have had in the past, we can create a container inside here to hold that information so it can be represented or analyzed in the platform without having collected it here. So that's a little bit about the details of that platform. Carla, maybe you can switch back to the slides if I stop sharing. Great. Okay, so that's a little tour of the software interface. Happy to do other demonstrations for people that might want to dig into that or look at that on a pilot basis. If I could go to the next slide, we can show a little bit more about more in-depth analysis and how we look at tracking purchase experience. So as Marcia mentioned, we are looking at a lot of information which is not declared answer information. So we can collect images of the shelf. We obviously are validating images of the product after it's been, after it's been cooked or consumed. So we want to make sure that the users has got the product in home. But then there's also video and open answer related information, which we can aggregate, give to the client, but then also look at the natural language recognition in every different type of language to do kind of a data mining. We work with a couple of different algorithms to do open answer and declared verbal response analysis to add to that kind of purchase experience information. Next slide. So we talk about this full purchase driver information, and then it's not just about what are the drivers of preference or drivers of liking within the food matrix. We also want to look at what are the impacts of the other things that the consumer went through in their journey. So price, package, branding, could I find it in the store? All these different reasons which cause the consumer to buy the product, taste the product, and then decide the key thing, am I going to actually buy it again or not? And then we can even measure whether or not they're going to buy it again if we follow up with them later, or if they did buy it again. These are so-called VIP analyses, which we do separately and in a bespoke way, where we measure the impact of the various different components of that purchase journey measurement that we might have looked at. And it could mean things like shelf experience, it could mean price, but this is very important. What we found is that oftentimes there can be a big focus on optimizing the food or the beverage, but there may be something that's completely unrelated to actually the quality of the food product or the food matrix, which is actually impacting people's willingness to repurchase. And of course, this can be various factors, but unless we're able to look at this from a numeric and statistical point of view, those things don't necessarily come out. So this is another type of analysis which we do a fair amount of, and then are able to display to the customer. What allows marketing and other consumer insights disciplines to find some interest in getting value out of the same study. Next slide. Okay, so speed or speed of execution. This is a big advantage in digital. We believe it's going to become more and more of an advantage, particularly as we are able to integrate with different parts of the purchase experience that are not quote unquote contrived, like things like just evaluating the product in an e-com situation. But we'll show you a little bit about how we think about this execution. So our typical execution, and Marcia can make some comment on this. We tend to be like less than half the time that it would take to do a traditional study. Of course, this varies based on the complexity of the study. If there has to be different sets of samples or different iterations done, the logistics time can add to the general execution. But if we're just talking about evaluating multiple products in a market to understand drivers of preference or benchmarking, this can actually be done in a couple of days if we get alignment on the questionnaire. And since all the data is in real time, the conclusions can actually start to be teased out, and the reporting can start to be done even before the whole data collection is finished. And finally, then we can also start to compare data over time. So we can even map the collection out over time and start to compare it. And that's when having those statistical analytical tools to compare past studies is really important. I don't know, Marcia, coming out of the industry, I don't know if you have any comments on that in terms of how that impacts the internal workings of the company to be able to get things quickly.
Yeah, well, for sure, speed is of paramount these days. And again, as Daniel mentioned, the ability to have that data real time and to be able to begin to look at it, work with it, review it, and have data very quickly for you to work with. And again, a lot of times you might be waiting for the data and then, okay, so now we're going to add in information about the raw materials or the processing conditions or something about packaging or so forth. Those things can be done as the test is going on, as you're pulling that data and begin to add other data, to the study and analyzing all that together, again, very quickly in order to help you make the best business decision.
Next slide. So the way that we think about obviously speed is critical. You need to have the people ready to do the evaluation. When we are recruiting or when we are growing our communities, and we really think about growing our community the same way that Facebook thinks about growing their user base, right? Like we're always doing it. Whether or not we have a project in a particular country, we just are always focused on growing community everywhere, which means we run our own, product reviews, we run our own engagement surveys, and we make the user do things as they kind of integrate and onboard into the application. So of course we know their demographic information, we know living situation, but what more importantly, we know their past behavior with us. We know how they behaved and interacted with tasting a different product, which was probably not a client product. We know how they, the speed at which they do things. We know how often they interact with our user support group. We have a user support group that's available 20 hours a day around the world. But we also understand their preferences, right? So, yes, we're asking about preferences for client-related information, but we have a lot of other preferences in other categories for the same users, which we don't sell that data, but we're able to then curate based on, different situations if that's important. And then we know what we call it the digital fingerprint. How do they click? How often do they, how long does it take them to answer questions? How often do they log in? These are all really important things to track the behavior of what could be a person that we don't ever actually meet face-to-face ever, all right? And so these are things which I think, from my background, come a lot out of the e-commerce and industry where you're fighting fraud, commercial fraud quite a bit. We've implemented a lot of these same techniques to validate and learn our consumer user, and we're in kind of constant contact with them. We run our own focus groups with consumers for different reasons, usually to develop our own product better, our own user experience. We're doing that all the time in various different countries. So we have a lot of, real intimate interaction. These are not just people that are in some sort of email list that we kind of get to go do something. We really kind of get to know who they are and what they're doing. So when it comes time to do a project, we kind of know who we want to use, and we can then let them open that up to other recommendations. They can share it with friends and things like this, but we really sort of know where the best nodes of quality are. Next slide, please. And the main point is, this is everywhere, right? Like there's almost no country in the world that is not touched by the smartphone revolution at this point. Even old generation phones, which you find in less developed countries, are still able to run our software and most other modern softwares. So just in the past 2 or 3 years, there's been even continued to be a huge step change in this. Of course, COVID made people more aware of this, and also now people are more used to living in more like a virtual setting. So this digital access, and now the advent of more capable, logistics around the world, which is also pretty new development, really allows us to bring a community together that we can touch and feel and interact with in a different way using the application, so that we understand their physical, tactile, and sensoric experience, but also we can talk to them digitally, which just brings a great amount of flexibility, I think, for the future. Next slide. Just quickly about execution speed. I think, Marcia, when you first met us, or when we first started working, we were in kind of like the 4 and 5 week segment. Now we are looking at always trying to get faster. We love to think about 2 weeks, maybe 10 days. Typically, though, there's always some time that's required to set up a questionnaire and to define that with the customer. But we really look for, we're developing more and more techniques now where we can expand our reach to consumers, and then also the speed at which we can get that data back. And this really has to do with not just the size of the user group, but also some of the technological capabilities of the application to do like funnel understanding, like understand conversion. Not every user who screens in is going to go to the store and be able to find the product. Availability of the product is sometimes an issue. And so we've developed capabilities in which we can really quickly adapt to some of those access problems, and then be able to accelerate the speed by expanding the number of people that are screened in, or contracting it for very popular products and things like that. It's also possible to switch products out during a study. It happens pretty often that we'll discover a product that's out of stock or sometimes discontinued, and the client doesn't know that, and then we'll just replace it with another one and continue and finish.
And just to point out here too, that this is an example of, going, the consumer going somewhere and purchasing the product. The platform is also, and the company is capable of working with clients with, blind samples packaged appropriately and getting them into people's homes to evaluate, which happened quite a bit during, the pandemic, in terms of R&D organizations needing to find a way to evaluate products that used to be in the CLT, at an agency environment, blind. And this platform, and working with FlavorWiki, we're able to do that as well.
Thanks. That's right. And on the other side, we can also do digital only related questionnaires, which of course are super fast and very easy to do. I think we should, before going any further or getting too far down another track, pause for questions. Carla, before people might have to leave at the hour.
Yes, we have a couple of questions in the private section. We have one that is, how does this type of data work together with traditional sensory information?
Maybe Marsha, you can take that.
Sure.
One. How's that?
I will. So it works very well with traditional sensory information. So at Mondelez, when I was first looking at FlavorWiki and its capability, Mondelez has trained panels across the globe, and we really put it through its paces to look at, the data collection, what kind of data were you getting from the consumers with regards to descriptive analysis. And what we found was that it was well aligned with the trained panel. It was more of kind of like a summary. Again, your trained panels are going to be typically, 30, 40 attributes. That is too much for the consumer to handle. But the key attributes, the differences, relative differences between products, was the same from the trained panel versus what we got from the FlavorWiki platform, which I was very, very pleased with. So the way in which the attributes are presented to the consumer, in terms of looking at pairs of products and asking the consumer to identify which of those two attributes is more present or higher in the samples, and doing those pairings, over a sequential time and matching them up differently, the algorithm is able to come back then with the profile of the products or product. And again, I found it to be just really spot on with what we got from the trained panel. Again, as a summary, because you're going to have to think about what are the key attributes that you want to learn about, because you're not going to be able to, look at so many with the consumer.
Thanks.
Great.
I think we've got a couple of minutes. It's just 2 or 3 minutes, Carla, and one more. How's that?
Have you done any testing or validation and results compared to professional panels?
Yes, we have. So we've done research in the early days of the company together with the University of Applied Sciences in Zurich, which has a trained panel, and there we actually did quite a bit of structured research, master's thesis research on comparing them. And similar to what Marsha said, well, we like to talk about it being 85% or 90% as accurate, depending upon the complexity of the attribute set. It does depend upon the selection of the attribute descriptors used, but we also are able to identify from a statistical point of view which attribute descriptors are actually present in the product or which ones are poorly understood by the consumer. And that's an important point to raise. But yeah, we've done validation work. Of course, we're always learning. We have a couple of different algorithms now, depending upon what we need. In some cases where there's very tight differences, and we have a small number of panelists, we use a different mathematical algorithm to identify the differences in the products. Marcia, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I think you're spot on.
Okay.
Yeah, and it really does need to work in conjunction with your, with the train panel, but you are getting that consumer view and the differences, because sometimes the way in which the data is collected, you can find some very small differences through the FlavorWiki platform that may or may not be meaningful to you. So that's where you also have to work together with this data and with your train panel data.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're 1 minute prior, and sorry we didn't get that much chance for questions. But if there's any that are still there, Carla, we can follow up directly. So.
Perfect.
Yep. Happy to do that.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.
Thanks.
See you in the next one.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.